come to play. He's the biggest of them all. Step back, 4-3.
Phoenix forced a turnover at halfway. Yes, sir.
Clock at 10. Adams the off balance.
Oh my goodness!
Two on the clock.
Alrighty, guys, and welcome back to the Basketball Fix podcast. And we are continuing on with the NBL free agency fix. This has obviously been a massive point of interest, I guess, for every single NBL fan as teams start to make their final decisions before free agency officially opens on the 4th of April, this coming Friday as well. So that's where we'll start to see some of these major name players potentially moving clubs. We might see some potential new imports in the league, all the exciting things. But today's episode, we're going to be breaking down all of the options, the player options, the team options, and the mutual options as well, even though that's a thing which basically is a team option nowadays. I'm not sure the differences are on that, but I've brought my main man from the Basketball Fix podcast, Mr. Ryan Tucker. Ryan, mate, welcome to the NBL Free Agency Fix.
Thanks, Josh, mate. Good to be here. Good to finally feature on one of these programs. They've been killing it on the tube. Good to see all the views racking up and some great information coming out. And it's not until you kind of land a bit after the championship and you know, you obviously have your NRL and your AFL, but you still miss basketball. And I think these little episodes coming out and the chance to talk about the players, it kind of quenches that thirst a little bit.
It does. It definitely does quench that thirst a little bit, mate. It's obviously fun time of the year. It's my favorite time. Like, I love obviously basketball, and if the Perth Wildcats made the grand final, I could arguably put that in there as well as the greatest time of the season. But this is the pinnacle of NBL basketball and even basketball around the world. The free agency period in any singular sport has just taken every sport by storm. It's the most views, it's the most clicks, it's everything, because there's a genuine excitement about how can my team improve and where can my team build going forward. But in today's episode, we're going to be going through, like I mentioned, the accepted options, the declined options, and some of the contracts in which have already been signed heading into the NBL free agency period as well for NBL 26. So let's kick it off, mate, with some of these accepted options, because there's been a handful, and I'll give you a couple off the bat, mate, and we'll sort of briefly go through the rest of them. But Anthony Drmic for the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers was one of the first options taken in this NBL free agency period. A big signing by the Jack Jumpers with, in particular, Clint Steindl going out of the team.
Yeah, mate. And I think that's really important for the team that for a lot of the season struggled offensively, and losing a guy like, excuse me, like Steindl, who, you know, he wasn't a volume scorer, but you need the depth at that position, and you're already struggling with depth in all the positions and scoring depth. Then I think signing Drmic and having him there, knowing that's what you have, then it allows you to kind of build that depth behind that. And that's something that the Tassie Jack Jumpers will need to focus on throughout this free agency period. But it's good that they're getting the core guys set and under contract, and guys that are contributing to winning, which Drmic obviously is one of those.
Yeah, and JD, when we had him on from the Tasmanian Takeover as well, he said the exact same thing roughly, and also added the fact of the leadership in which he'll be able to bring in, probably not replace like for like with a Clint Steindl, but obviously be able to fill some of that void. So that's a great signing there for the Tasmania Jack Jumpers heading into this exciting NBL free agency period for them as well. I'm going to go and give you a bit of an older guy on the list here, mate. Nathan Sobey. He was one of the more hated players in the NBL by myself to start the season. I think he had a relatively good year for the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. Ultimately couldn't bring them to the promised land, obviously making the semi-final series, but had a pretty good season all around. His mutual option was taken by both parties, and it's going to be an exciting time for the Phoenix in NBL 26.
Yeah, I think the way the contract was structured, well, in my opinion, it's okay. We'll give it a shot. You know, coming from Brisbane and spending so much time there, coming to a new city, or it's not new for him, but coming back there and then having that team dynamic with so many new players coming to the Phoenix last season, changing their coach. I think the way the contract was structured was great for both parties, for Nathan and for the team. And, you know, say what you want about the guy, he contributed to winning on that team, especially in the second half of the season. And with Derek Walton Jr. being out so much, he was an integral part to how this team functioned. And and they're scoring. And I exactly like you, I warmed to the guy throughout the season in terms of him being within that team. I still struggle with his attitude to the game, but I can respect him, and that's who he is. And he's a competitor and a player and a guy that wants to win, and that's what Southeast Melbourne need if they're going to take that extra step next season.
And that's the thing, like, I think I saw a slight little development in his leadership ability this season, which I hadn't seen in Brisbane. And I can understand because there is a slightly different dynamic between, obviously, the Brisbane team of NBL 24 and the Southeast Melbourne team of NBL 25. He probably wasn't necessarily the number one guy because they had Matt Hurd at times. They had, obviously, Derek Welton Jr., Joe Wieskamp would have some moments here and there. Geordie Hunter as well was another guy who had a pretty good season. So there was a lot to build around. And I think obviously as well, the most important thing for Nathan Sobey is he had that strong coach once again. Josh King was not afraid to make the big calls. He wasn't afraid to bench star players. He wasn't afraid to tell players how it was. And that's where we got to see a bit more success, obviously, from Nathan Sobey in NBL 25. So exciting times ahead for the Phoenix. Now, I'm going to bundle three guys together here, and they're all Cairns Taipans. We've got Alex Higgins-Titcher, Kyron Galloway, and Kyle Adnam. Now, both of these guys, all three of these guys, I should say, have been accepted with their team options. So that team option has been taken up by the club heading into NBL 26. And this is an exciting time for the Cairns Taipans because essentially they only had one guy signed. It was Cody Statman going into NBL free agency. So now to bring Alex Higgins-Titcher and Kyron Galloway, two young guns who you can start to build around going forward. This is what the Cairns Taipans need, is these sort of players. And then obviously bringing in that veteran presence with Kyle Adnam. I think this is a great start to free agency. And we'll touch on another guy who signed going into NBL 26 as well a little bit later in the episode. But this core is really starting to take shape for the Cairns Taipans, isn't it?
Mate, it is. And you see the development of Higgins-Titcher as well from having that DP. He was a DP to start the season, right?
Yeah, all last season.
And then,
DP.
Yeah, and didn't get a game until round 4, and injuries started hurting the team. And then, he ended up starting 4 of the last 5 games for the team, averaging 47% from the field. He's just an energy guy, and you see now playing the 3-on-3 for Australia. So his development just in this short amount of time, and then you add another off season to that, add another NBL season next year. I think this guy has a really great future, and it's his athleticism, his energy, and the IQ all bundled up. I think Cairns are really building towards something. I can't really see them making big waves in NBL 26 if they can't get a proper superstar to replace Taron Armstrong. But they're building, and I think that's great for Cairns, and they need to be competitive for the entire season, not be out of the running, 2/3 of the way through.
Yeah, I think this is a massive signing. You can see the trajectory in which this kid is on. It's star level. You can just see the athleticism. You can see, the double-doubles, which were starting to rack up through the midpoint of the season towards the back end as well. I think there was a game we had 15 and 12 or 15 and 11 as well. And you could just see him starting to find his feet at the NBL level. And he had a great NBL 1 level season last year. But to make the jump to this next level is no easy feat, especially in your first season. But he seems to have, obviously, everything going for him. He's got the athleticism, he's got the size, but he's got the most important thing, that's a bit of heart and a bit of brain as well, which we can start to see on the court. So major signings for the Cairns Taipans. Now, I'm going to briefly go through the next couple. Elijah Pepper, I don't think was much of a surprise to many with the team option being taken up by him. Obviously, I think he will step into the role with Benny Henschel potentially leaving for the NBA draft next season. We may see what we saw from Ben last season, obviously similar to Elijah this year. And then going forward, we will see that increase in minutes. And obviously, we'll probably see a little bit more output and development from Elijah Pepper. Another one from the Perth Wildcats was Tom Jerovich. Had a relatively good season for the Perth Wildcats. Very limited opportunity, though. But he showed some class and some polish. He's a big guy. He's going to take a little bit more time to develop for the Perth Wildcats. So that is going to be one that we look forward to in the future. Now, 2 breakers guys here, and I'm a massive fan of both of these kids. They're exciting players. Sean Bairstow is the first one. Obviously, a bit of family and a bit of royalty in the NBL between a couple of the family members there. And Carlin Davison. This kid has got some uber potential. Massive shout out to him. He had a triple-double a couple of days ago in the NZNBL. But I think if we look at the Cairns Taipans sort of young core, Ryan, these 2 guys are very similar for the New Zealand Breakers.
Yeah, like I think, with the whole change of ownership in New Zealand, the new kind of fresh approach, I think it's only fitting that you sign young guys that can help build around that core and fill up the rotation. Well, not fill up as in, 11, 12, 13, but can be integral parts of the rotation, but are solid players that that can contribute. There's still a lot of questions about the Breakers team and how they're going to end up looking uh, come NBL 26, but you start at the bottom, you work up, and you're going to build those solid foundations. It's much easier to build on than going top down, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great thing for the New Zealand Breakers going forward. And the last one as well, with an accepted option. It's a team option picked up by the Illawarra Hawks. Their first big move of this NBL free agency period, with HJ Lee re-signing to the club, which is a great step in the right direction for them. But let's jump into some of the options in which were declined. Now, they might be player options that were declined, team options that were declined, or mutual options. Now, the first one started very early on, and we've already spoken about him on the NBL free agency fix, but obviously Josh Bannon. We'll briefly touch on that one quickly. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Ryan. But he declined his player option from the Brisbane Bullets, and obviously all signs point to the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers.
Yeah. Do you know how old he is?
He'd be 24, I'd say. 24,
Okay.
25. He's a young guy. I think he's 2 years out of college. He might be 25.
So it's not a thought about him trying to go to a winning team straight away to get a championship. I don't know. Like I think there's potential at the Bullets, whether or not as a organization with Bannon has a lot more insight into that than what any of us do. Maybe he thought that, okay, this organization isn't going anywhere. I'm not going to be developing as a player and maybe a championship contender in this next contract period here. So I need to find something else. Because I think he was an integral part of the team and he was lifted to be a leader and a really important player in that outfit. So like the reasoning behind the move, I can't really understand without knowing any of the stuff. I haven't read up on it. But if he ends up in Tassie, then that's a great deal for him because he's moving to a contender and he'll play an integral role on that team. So I think wherever he ends up, the team's going to be very happy and he'll make a big difference for any team.
Yeah, he definitely will. I don't know. I've got a couple of thoughts. Now, obviously, we know Derek Rucker is a former Brisbane Bullet player, and he sort of has a lot to do with the Brisbane Bullets and everything like that. But all season long, he was pushing a narrative that Josh Bannon's an 8 or 9 guy in your rotation. And it kind of surprised me a little bit because if you go back to NBL 24, there were moments throughout that season which got me really excited. Like, I'm a massive Josh Bannon guy. You know that. Jez knows that.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that listening at home. There were signs that pointed to this kid exploding this NBL 25 season. And I know there was injuries and I know all that sort of stuff as well. And, the coaching staff and the situation there as well. But he just never took that next step. And I don't know, maybe there's a part in the back of his head where he's hearing these rumblings and rumors around the organization as him being an 8 or 9 man in the rotation and sat there going, hang on, I'm a starter for a genuine NBL team. I know what I've got. I'm 24 years of age. I just checked it now. I've had a great college career. I've got Australian boomers in my sights, everything like that. I'm not going to waste my time up here for an organization who hasn't been able to win for the past, many, many years now. So I like the move for Josh. I've obviously had an extended period. I'd talk about this. So if you want to go listen to that, I believe it was day 2 of the NBL free agency fix. They're all in a sort of playlist here on YouTube if you're watching here, or you can go back and have a look on Spotify, but a bit more in-depth information there. But we'll move on now. 2 big ones today though, mate. This one kind of surprised me, to be fair. This is quite shocking. Jack White has declined his player option with Melbourne United. Why do you think this happened? Like, I know there's obviously been the talk about him wanting to pursue opportunities in Europe and the NBA. I don't know, mate. There's a part of me that believes he didn't get the money that he first expected he was going to get with Melbourne United, going into potentially being the marquee player. And maybe that's why he's packed up and left Melbourne United for the time being.
Well, he strikes me as a real confidence guy. Whether he's either got it or he doesn't got it.
Yeah.
And coming off that final series, I can imagine him being in a pretty low point, and which is not fair because he had an amazing season and he is a great basketball player. And you would hope that his management kind of steering him in the right direction in something that would be beneficial for him as a player. And that could be exploring opportunities overseas, and whether that's from a development aspect or from a money aspect, you can flip a coin, and it's probably either one or both. I think if he's not getting paid at Melbourne, he could get paid at any other club. He is a fantastic player, and say what you want about the shortcomings in this final series, you can coach that away. You can help him get better because his skill is really good. He's a fantastic player. So I have a really I'm very shocked that didn't happen. Didn't resign there, but I think it'll kind of come out in the wash to see why that happened when you see where he ends up signing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you probably could see it coming. Like now that it's happened, I can see it happening like from a mile away, because a guy like him normally wouldn't wait until the last minutes of the free agency option sort of side of it to announce that he's not returning to the club. And his statement that the NBL released today said, over the next few months, I'll be assessing my playing options internationally to determine what is the best next move. Now, he averaged 13.3 points per game, 8.9 rebounds, was a crucial part of this team making it to the grand final series. I know he had his flaws in that series, but he's a genuine superstar, and I think he could go back and play in the NBA. Now, I don't necessarily think he'd be playing massive minutes. Like, he'll be doing the exact same role he did for the Denver Nuggets a couple of years ago. So is that the best thing for him right now in the peak of his powers? Maybe that's what he thinks, and maybe that's where he wants to play his basketball. But I think it wouldn't hurt coming back to the NBL for one more season, having a better year, going in potentially winning an NBL Grand Final series and having a great series as well, and then propelling yourself at 28 or 29 years of age back into the NBA potentially for another run. So it's a bit of a shock to me. I don't think we'll see him. I know there was a rumor going around that, he's still open to a return to Melbourne. I guarantee you he is open to a return to Melbourne, but something's just telling me I don't think we'll see him back at Melbourne. So it's going to be interesting because I think this was the player in which people sort of ruled them out of going after Sam Froling because they've got Jack White. Now, I know Sam's still hurt, but maybe Melbourne United still have some room and some cash and are thinking more of a long-term basis where they can offer Sam Froling a deal and maybe try to steal him away from the Illawarra Hawks. That's maybe one to watch over the NBL free agency period. But a couple of young guns here, mate. We'll bundle them together. Flynn Cameron, his mutual option was declined with Melbourne United. Nick Marshall had his team option declined by the Adelaide 36ers. And David Okwera, also the team option declined by the Perth Wildcats. What's your initial thoughts on those three young guys?
Well, I mean, Nick Marshall, I guess you understand, he didn't get a lot of game time for the 36ers last season. So obviously he's not part of their the way they want to structure their team. But he's a great player, and he'll excuse me, froggy throat. He'll be picked up somewhere, and he'll be a great player in the league within 1 or 2 seasons. So I don't think that's a problem for him as a player and his career. I'm interested to hear it for you as a Wildcats fan about Aquera. He was a part of the Boomers team in these Asia Cup qualifiers, has a great potential as a young ball player, and with the restructuring that I guess now is going to be happening at the Wildcats with no Cotton and possibly no Pinder, or, I would have kept Aquera, tried to keep him. I don't know. How do you see it?
Yeah, it's a weird one, mate, because he was probably one of the more sought after young talent a couple of years ago. Obviously, I think he came over from Melbourne United 2 seasons ago. So he come over with a whole lot of potential and a whole lot of promise. Now, I don't think he delivered and lived up to those promises and the expectation, but I think as well, you've got to put a little bit of onus on John Rillie in that situation, because I don't think he gave him enough opportunity. But it's also hard when you've got some really great players around him, guys like Christian Doolittle and obviously Keanu Pinder. You also had Alexander Sarr and Itano Munsa in similar positions. So you've got 4 guys there, or 2 guys in each season, who are already ahead of him. So he's always going to have this backup role and have to have that backup mentality. So I think there's a little bit of this in which maybe the Perth Wildcats did want to keep him going into NBL 26, but I think it's more maybe David just saying, hey, this isn't the right situation for me. I'd like if you decline the option, I want to go explore more options. And maybe if all things are considered and that he can't find a better option than the Perth Wildcats, we may see him back at Perth. So that's how I more read the room with David Aquera, because I think he's genuinely got some major potential in the NBL. I still think he's got to put on a bit more size. He'd probably only be 23, 24 maximum. So still very young in the grand scheme of things, but a high potential player for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. I think there's a couple of teams that will have him on their radar for sure. Maybe a Cairns Taipans, the Adelaide 36ers, someone of that ilk. Now, we'll move forward as well. The next couple of guys who we'll speak about, Isaiah Leartha, Akechalia, Dylan Stith, and Jacob Rigoni. Probably not really too much shocks here. Dylan Stith has had an incredible 3x3 tournament for Australia, but didn't really get much of an expectation and a bit of game for the Cairns Taipans. Obviously, Jacob Rigoni in a similar ilk there as well, and Akechalia. But Isaiah Leartha is the interesting one here. They had such a deep roster last season, and it was always going to be hard to play so many of these guys every single game. But he potentially moves to another NBL club or might look overseas. What are your thoughts on Isaiah Leartha? Because he's a pretty solid backup to maybe starting point guard in the NBL.
Yeah, that kind of surprised me, but it was his decision. He didn't pick up his option, if I'm...
Yeah, so I believe it was his mutual option was declined with the Sydney Kings. So I think obviously both parties, it's essentially a team option, but it's not at the same time. Like, it's a weird one. It's not a player option. It's not a team option. It's a mutual option. So I think he's declined his half of that option, and the Sydney Kings haven't decided to bring him back.
Well, it could be just the Kings went all in on that season. You know, their roster was stacked, and it would have, you know, the salary cap and all that kind of stuff. It's not easy to hold on to everybody when you have that, and it'll be the same now for Illawarra. So it could be a thing that they just had to cut costs somewhere, and you know, are you going to spend this amount of time and effort on a backup guard when you have, you know, the guys you have in front of him? Do you use that money somewhere else in a forward position or something, or just save that cash? He was underutilized for the team, and it's just, you know, a lot of players were. We spoke in length about Cam Oliver on the Kings all through the season. There are a lot of players that were underutilized, and I think, you know, if you're a guy that's in that position and you feel you're not playing enough basketball, you're not playing to your potential because you don't fit well into the team, then I don't think you're... And you see how much they underperformed as a team. They weren't a contender. No matter how much everybody wanted to say they were never great. They'd struggled to beat the top teams, and they just bashed the shit teams. So I think as a player, you look at, okay, well, maybe I can be a successful somebody somewhere else and set myself up for another contract in the next couple of years by moving to another team where I can get more court time. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. Like, I'm not sure, and I'm not set if we'll see him again in the NBL. That's my only concern. Like, there are a couple of teams in which I could see him pop up at. Like, a Melbourne United intrigues me with all the Matthew Dellavedova situation and how that's going to play out and everything like that. You know, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Jack White's leaving, so is Matthew Dellavedova. Lock it in now." So I'm not sure that's the correct way of doing it. But obviously, I think Isaiah Leartha would be the perfect sort of player and backup for Melbourne United in whatever situation they do. He's got a lot of Shayili about him, and I think a guy like Dean Vickerman and a head coach like Dean Vickerman would be able to unlock a little bit more of that potential and also that consistency, which sometimes he does lack as well. But Brian Goorjian ran that ship last year in Sydney like an absolute basket case. So I don't understand why any player wanted to stay after last season. Hopefully Andrew Bogut can get the old dementia-ridden man back in line come NBL 26. But yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure for the Sydney Kings.
Before you go further, we didn't really speak much about Flynn Cameron, but he moves out of that kind of backup point guard role from Melbourne, which also opens the door for Leartha. And do you think Cameron, does he end up in New Zealand? Or I know our mate Henry was talking a bit about that.
Yeah, I think... See, I don't see him as a guard per se. So I know he handles the ball a lot, but I see him more as that sort of maybe point forward to a certain degree. Like he's more of a scorer and a defensive player, I think, in my personal opinion. But I think for what the Breakers are starting to do here, we're seeing it, the back in black and everything like that. They're going back to their roots. Jack White's head's cutting it off right now, but you can actually see one of the New Zealand Breakers jerseys, the old school bloody nice jerseys in the background there. But they are going back to their roots. They will target plenty of New Zealand players this offseason. I think we'll see Hiram Harris pop up there. I think Flynn Cameron's nearly a certainty to pop up there. They've just got to go back to their roots. And I think that's what they've been really trying to succeed. So he'll be an amazing piece of the puzzle, Flynn Cameron. And I'm going to do an special episode on him and a few other younger guys as well, because he is a genuine star in the making as well. So yeah, great pick up there, I think, for sure. And that's obviously a great reason as to Isaiah Leartha as well. There are going to be minutes opening up for Melbourne United. I think they'll genuinely make some changes coming in to NBL 26. But last little part of the show, mate, the contractor players. There's been 3 contractor players so far. Now, Christian Doolittle signed a 3-year extension with the Perth Wildcats a couple of weeks ago. I've already done a full episode on that. That was episode number 2 as well of the NBL free agency fix. But the 2 most recent ones, we'll start with Jesse Wagstaff. He's extended one more time with the Perth Wildcats going into NBL 26. I wonder if there was a slight little moment where they thought, let's bring Jesse back and maybe we get Bryce as well. But what are your thoughts on Mr. Wagstaff coming back for one more year?
Well, it's about leadership, isn't it? And we've spoken about this across multiple franchises already in this episode, and you've touched on it in pretty much all the episodes. Leadership's important, and you lose a guy like Bryce Cotton, you need to stabilize the team and have a guy that can be the voice when there is a big void to fill. And I think Jesse will accomplish that. And you've seen how important he was was it the semi-final series or somewhere late in the season? Yeah, how important he was to the team. And he still produces. Like, he's not going to be a guy that you stick at the end of the bench and you just have, just to help him out in the locker room. He can still produce on the court. So I think given Perth's position in the free agency market right now, I think it's a great decision. You have another attempt to see off the guy in the best possible way, and you're going to get contribution no matter what.
I think he's on that LeBron James sort of career trajectory here, mate. We might see him for 22 bloody years the way he's going. I think he'll be an old man. I posted a meme a while ago on our Instagram page about an old guy in a nursing home dancing around. Well, that'll be Jesse Wagstaff in a handful of years. But yeah, it's a great signing. I think the culture and the leadership in which you bring up is obviously a massive part of that whole story, and obviously why it's a great signing for the Wildcats. But we'll move on, but we'll talk about a player who's going to make an impact for this particular team. And this is, I think, the most exciting piece of the puzzle so far for any team. Sam Wardenberg has signed back at the Cairns Taipans for NBL 26, only on a 1-year deal though. That doesn't fill me with any confidence from a Cairns Taipans perspective. I would have liked to have seen him locked away for 2 or 3 years, but maybe he's going to see off, I guess, the Adam Ford era by himself for one more year and maybe potentially go and chase some big money at a New Zealand Breakers, Melbourne United or Sydney Kings next year. But what are your thoughts on Mr. Wardenberg re-signing for the 1 year?
Well, mate, if we just purely talk about Supercoach and how this guy just eluded me all kind of first half of the season until I gave up on Supercoach. But he, played 26 games, started in all of them, 30 minutes a game, was their third best scorer, 14.5 points per game, 6.5 rebounds. He is all over the court, and he'll be an integral part of this team going forward on both ends of the court. And his length, his athleticism, and he's a pretty good passer as well. Like, I rate the guy. I think he's a really good player, and it's exciting to see this type of talent in the market like Cairns. And they need to attract some good players to be able to be competitive. And I think this is a great starting point. Lock down Sam, and then maybe attract a second or a third guy that can be your superstar. And Sam is a great player.
Yeah, I genuinely think you can make a conversation and make an argument for him being a top 10 local in the NBL. Like, I think he's on that trajectory right now. And if he's not right now, I think he will be by the end of NBL 26, because you pair him up with, like we mentioned earlier, Alex Higgins-Titcher, Kyron Galloway, and Kyle Adnam to start, with obviously Cody Statman already at the team. The core is really strong. You could probably look to start an Alex Higgins-Titcher at certain points of the season. If you don't go for a small forward import, you might go for a point guard, shooting guard, and a center, which I think would be perfect. They may bring Tanner Groves back. That's still got to be decided by the Cairns Taipans. I think would be a great acquisition for them because he works so well with Sam Wardenberg. But they're going to be exciting, and I think this is a great decision for Sam because he gets another season under his belt, and I think there's a little bit of maybe intrigue. Do I want to go and try, Europe potentially? Do I want to go and potentially see if I can make it in the NBA? This 1 year deal coming into the prime of his career, that's what it's all about. It's all about him trying to maximize his play and his money, which I have no problems at all about. And I think it's a great acquisition for the Cairns Taipans for another season. But Ryan, mate, that'll wrap up.
They haven't confirmed who's coaching yet, right?
They haven't yet. No, I think it will be Mr. Kerry Williams, I believe, maybe. So
I
they
wonder
haven't
if that's
announced
why
just
it's
yet.
only a 1 year contract. He wants to wait and see who's coaching before.
That could be a thing. But I think we'll get a decision in the next couple of days. I know Brisbane possibly will announce their coach over the next couple of days. They want that set in stone before they decide to do NBL free agency. But we could see the same with the Cairns Taipans. Like, I think you'd be stupid not to. You know, until you have someone locked in, you know, I think it's a dumb decision to go into free agency because, you know, a player might be thinking they're going to come into one situation playing a certain role and a new coach comes in and basically throws it up in the air. So, yeah. I'm not sure. Maybe it could be a good little point there that you raise, obviously, with the 1 year extension being around the unknown of the coach. But that'll wrap up today's episode. That is all of the players who have accepted contracts, declined options, and obviously some of the guys who have already signed for NBL 26. This is going to be an exciting part of the week coming up, mate. This is the crux of NBL free agency. The rumors will start to run very, very hot, and obviously we'll start to see some signings come Friday when NBL free agency opens up. But Ryan, mate, what have you been going up to, mate? You've got a little podcast that you and Jez are working on, which is doing very, very well ahead of the game. Can you give the listeners here a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, well, mate. Well, I missed the episode last week with my croaky voice, and that was the best rating episode we've had. So just record another one before jumping on here with you, speaking about the AFL and NRL. And apart from an NBL free agency fix, I'd say the best segment on any podcast or videocast in the world, and it's GPTKO. So head over to Ahead of the Game, check it out. Let us know what you'll think about it as well. Thanks, mate.
No, definitely. I'll leave the links in the description of this video and you go and check that out. It's obviously great. If you like Australian sports and everything to do with worldwide sports as well, make sure you go and check out Ahead of the Game. 3 episodes weekly with plenty of different topics and some interesting topics as well at that. But that'll wrap up today's episode. We'll be back towards the back end of the week, unless there are some crazy rumors that do come out of the NBL world. I'm looking to have Mr. Pete Hooley on Friday when NBL free agency opens up, and we'll go through some of the early signings and everything going on in the NBL world. But Mr. Ryan Tucker, thank you very much for jumping on, and we hope you've gotten your basketball fix.
Which stars come to play? He's the biggest of them all. Step back, 4-3.
Phoenix forced a turnover at halfway. Yes, sir.
Clock at 10. Adams the off balance. Oh!